Welcome to this episode of Sound Off Extra here on the official YouTube channel for the Solomonster Sounds Off Wrestling Podcast, which you can listen to each and every Sunday on the Solomonster.com, Stitcher Radio, TuneIn Radio, or iTunes. I am the Solomonster. This is your official Survivor Series 2014 review. Big pay-per-view last night on the WWE Network. The first time ever that WWE has offered a pay-per-view for free. And it was certainly a memorable one, a historic night featuring the debut of Sting for the first time ever, showing up in a WWE ring after, I don't even know, 25 years, maybe close to 30 years in the business, all those years in WCW, all those years in TNA. You know, he was the icon, the franchise player in that promotion, and finally inside a WWE ring. It's a night that, whether or not you're a Sting fan or not, it will be remembered for a long time to come. Nice little footnote that The Undertaker made his debut at the Survivor Series back in 1990, and so here we are now in 2014, and Sting makes his debut at the Survivor Series as well. Cool little trivia footnote there. On Twitter, I said that it was a good show with an excellent finish. You know, we had Dolph Ziggler positioned like a star for the first time that I can remember. And I know he won the Money in the Bank briefcase. He had that big win over John Cena at TLC. It feels like a lifetime ago. But he really came out of this feeling like a major star when this show was over. And they also planted a seed for Sting against Triple H, possibly at WrestleMania if The Undertaker can't go. I'm not sure that they even know yet if The Undertaker's going to be wrestling next year. And if not, which I think is probably still the match that a lot of people want to see. I know a lot of people think it's going to be a terrible match if they do it. Sting and Triple H, quality-wise, may be a better match. But the marquee match is still Undertaker and Sting, no matter what you think may actually happen once the bell rings. And if they can't do it, then they did a good job last night of setting up the next big opponent if Undertaker can't go. Now, we knew going into this show that it was a one-match show. And that's exactly what it turned out to be. Even if you were looking forward to Bray Wyatt and Dean Ambrose, and I was, the only thing promoted worth a damn for this show was the main event. And I thought that main event delivered and then some. I thought that was just an excellent main event. That being said, the rest of this show, and when I posted that tweet mentioning that I thought it was a good show with a great finish, people kind of jumped on me. How can you say this was a good show? It was terrible. It was full of shit. Here's the thing. That's not exactly what I meant. I was more talking about the ending of the show, the ending of the main event, and the Sting appearance, and what they did with Dolph. It was a one-match show, and that match delivered. I will say the rest of the show, I can't say it was all bad, because I didn't think it was all bad, but it was a glorified episode of Monday Night Raw. And when you have Jerry Lawler on television, you know, the week before, cackling, you know, about how if you've never seen... That's my Pillsbury Doughboy impression of Jerry Lawler, by the way. Cackling about how if you've never seen a WWE pay-per-view before, it's unlike anything you've ever seen. That's not the impression you want to make if you give people a glorified episode of a 3-hour Monday Night Raw. And that's exactly what this pay-per-view was. There was nothing on that undercard that you don't see any given Monday night. And some of it was actually pretty bad. So we'll get into it here, but I don't want people to think that I thought this was like a great show or anything like that. I'm kind of in the middle. I'm not dumping on it the way some people are, but by no means was this show a perfect Survivor Series. By no means was this anywhere close to even being the best Survivor Series of all time. Not even in the conversation. But let's take this one by one and we'll go through each segment here. The first thing I want to do is just talk about some network stuff. Two things on the WWE Network. Number one, they made a big announcement last night, and that is that Stone Cold Steve Austin will host a live edition of his podcast with Vince McMahon as his guest. It will air live on the WWE Network next Monday night, so a week from now, after Monday Night Raw. And that's exactly the sort of thing they should be doing with the network. I'm surprised they haven't done stuff like that up to this point. I think it's very smart on their part to wait until next Monday, not this week, and do it then, because it's going to be December 1st, which means it falls just after the free month of the network expires. So if you want to hear Stone Cold and Vince McMahon live on the network, you're going to have to pony up $9.99, and that's a smart move on their part. On the other hand, the thing about the network I wanted to kind of rant on a little bit here is they promoted a post-show when Survivor Series was over. And it wasn't just the usual, hey, we're going to have a post show with Renee Young and Booker T and Alex Riley, and they're going to be babbling about nonsense. They promoted Vince McMahon making an appearance on the post show, giving his reaction to the outcome of the main event. That's a pretty big draw right there. A lot of people probably would like to have seen what Vince McMahon would have had to say about Sting's appearance and about his son-in-law and his daughter losing their jobs. So that was the big hook for the post show. The only thing is, there was no fallout. They never aired the post-show. They went immediately into a replay of the pay-per-view, and then I had people tweeting me going, well, it's going to be airing now, they said at like 1:45 a.m. So I guess they must have made some kind of announcement online. It was going to air when the replay of Survivor Series was over. Now, I wasn't sticking around to find out. I went to bed. But I wake up this morning and I check the on-demand library, and nothing. There is no fallout listed. There's nothing in the on-demand archives. I am going crazy. Like, am I imagining this? And I started asking some of you guys, and you said the same thing. It never aired after the replay of the pay-per-view either. They just never aired it. Now, maybe they're going to save Vince's reaction for Raw, which makes sense. I mean, I would have done that to begin with. I never would have bothered to even announce this. But whatever they're going to end up doing, and I'm sure we will get Vince's reaction on Raw, you can't do that. I mean, how does something like that even happen? And it's not the first time they've advertised a post show on the network and then failed to deliver it. They just didn't do it. This is not a one-time occurrence. This has happened at least one time before. And this is par for the course with WWE. I mean, how many times have we seen them on Raw promote a main event for SmackDown? They tape SmackDown the very next day, and they completely change plans. And the advertised main event never even happens. It's happened on the main event show on the network before, where they promote, hey, live tomorrow night on main event, so-and-so will wrestle so-and-so, and they'll change that too. So it's kind of their MO at this point, that they will just change plans on a dime. To me, when you do something like that, it just makes you look amateur and Mickey Mouse. And that's exactly how they looked last night. You can't promote something like that for the network and then not deliver. I would love to know what the explanation is. The only thing I could figure is the pay-per-view went long. It went just about the full 3 hours. There was no 10 or 15 minutes free at the end for them to kind of shoehorn a post-show in there. To me, that's not an excuse. It's your own network. Now, if the issue is, well, we don't want to knock off the programming schedule, we want to stay on schedule, I don't buy it. They have a section on the network called Breaking News that they created when Roman Reigns got hurt. And they had Scott Stanford in a studio, and they broke into live programming, quote-unquote, on the network for a breaking news update that went about 5 or 10 minutes, and then they went back to their programming. So if you can break in with breaking news updates, I really don't see what is the problem with breaking in for 10 minutes with a Vince McMahon post-show interview, and then you can go back to your programming and you let the voiceover guy say, we now return you to your originally scheduled programming already in progress. So, I mean, God forbid if they go back to an episode of ECW Hardcore Television from 1995 that's already in progress and people miss the first 10 minutes, even though the fucking thing is in the on-demand library, they can watch it at any time. I mean, they have no excuse. There is no excuse for them not airing the post-show that they promised. And the post-show, look, it's not a big deal. It's not like the end of the world that this specific post-show didn't air. It's just this idea of advertising something that night. They weren't even advertising something for tomorrow or next week. They were advertising something for like 2 hours later. And they go 15 minutes long, and it's like, oh, I guess we can't do it. To me, like I said, it's amateur Mickey Mouse bullshit, and it does the network no favors. So I thought that was very dumb. We had on the pre-show Fandango, who is now managed, I guess, by Rosa Mendez. She is his new dance partner. Meet the new Fandango. Same as the old Fandango. The only thing different about him, he got a new haircut. His music changed. His outfit is kind of different. So I guess those are noticeable changes. Other than that, same old Fandango. And he won. He beat Justin Gabriel with the same leg drop off the top rope. There was really nothing more to it than that. Like I said, it's just a slight tweak on an old character that they're going to do nothing with, and they'll probably forget about in the next 2 or 3 weeks. We had Cesaro and Jack Swagger, former tag team partners, going one-on-one on the pre-show. Cesaro came out, cut a promo about how he's proud to be from Switzerland. And then Swagger and Zeb came out. They cut a promo, and they had a match. That's about all I can say about it. Cesaro did some power moves. He was throwing Swagger around with some suplexes. They had a decent match. And in the end, Swagger got Cesaro to tap out to the ankle lock. And my issue with this, anybody who listens to my podcast knows, I'm a big advocate for Cesaro. I think they could be doing so much more with this guy. You know, he doesn't have to be the world heavyweight champion, but what they're doing with him is inexplicable to me. And it's something that they've done with him that we've seen them do with other guys before, like a Dolph Ziggler, okay, among others, where they'll start to push them and get people kind of excited and get people invested in them, and then they'll stop. They'll pull back. So the constant starting and stopping, what happens after a while is people just don't care. Because it's almost like I think they're afraid to get behind somebody because they've been duped so many times before. And the stuff with Heyman, it ended up not going anywhere, and Cesaro has just been in this purgatory ever since. So here he is, tapping out to Jack Swagger. Now, Jack Swagger is a guy who they've done dick with since the feud with Rusev ended. I never expected Swagger to beat Rusev. He should not have beaten Rusev. But when you have JBL on television every week telling you what a loser this guy is, he let down his country, what a loser, what a loser. After a while, you start to believe it. Swagger has done nothing since the feud ended with Rusev. He supposedly was added to Team Cena, except he got beaten up. And I'm pretty sure, and somebody will correct me if I'm wrong, but that Friday on SmackDown, after he got beaten up on Raw and taken out of the Survivor Series match, I think he was right back on television that week wrestling a match like nothing had ever happened. I know he was on the house shows wrestling. And here he is on this show. He's on the pre-show. How come he couldn't have been added back to Team Cena? Was he so badly beaten that he was unable to compete? So that didn't make any sense, number one. But it just goes to show you what they thought of the guy. They never had any intention of putting him on Team Cena. It was just a way to, I guess have the Authority beat him up and slide somebody else in there, even though he was back wrestling right away and it made no sense. But that's what they've been doing with Swagger. He's nobody special. And yet, even Cesaro can't get a win over him on the pre-show. On the pre-show, not even the pay-per-view. The Bunny can wrestle on the pay-per-view, not the pre-show. So I don't know what the hell they're doing with Cesaro. It's, I'm just beyond being upset. I just kind of shake my head and accept it for what it is. And I mentioned this on Twitter, I hope when they call up Sami Zayn from NXT, they program him with Cesaro first. Because I'm starting to think about the NXT guys and how you might want to debut some of them on the main roster. They got a lot of good guys down there. And guys like Zayn and Neville, and probably the Ascension, they're going to be up first, I would imagine. Maybe Charlotte. And then that next round of guys like Hideo Itami and Finn Balor, sooner rather than later, I'm sure they'll make their way to the main roster as well. And I keep thinking about Zayn and how they could debut this guy. And, I pitched a wacky idea months ago involving him and Brock Lesnar. Complete fantasy stuff, but I just see him as this underdog that people will get behind right away. He's a very likable guy. He's a great wrestler. But I think back to the feud with Cesaro and the matches they had down in NXT that were just phenomenal. If you wanted to get this guy over and make a star in one night or make a star, in one program, the easiest way to do that is put him in there with Cesaro because you're going to get great matches out of the two of them. The people are going to get into it. You're not doing anything with Cesaro, so if you have no plans for the guy, then fuck it. You may as well program Zayn with him, and at least you'll make a star out of it. So I think that would be a good role for Cesaro if they're not going to do anything else with the guy. But just, you can't just keep beating him all the time. You got to let him keep some credibility. So the pay-per-view itself opened with Vince McMahon strutting down to the ring and introducing the Authority. Yes, we had an Authority promo to open up the show. And I had forgotten for a moment that I was watching a pay-per-view and I thought I was watching Raw. Now, what they did in this segment was they set up a new twist in the main event, where Triple H and Stephanie are just completely full of themselves, and, even if we lose, we're still going to be around and employed, and we're going to have power over you, and Vince was like, well, not so fast. And he said that if Team Authority loses, the only person who has the power to hire back Triple H and Stephanie at some point, if he sees fit to do so, is John Cena. So that was the new little wrinkle in this whole thing. And Stephanie was very good in this segment. Here's the thing, though. I don't care how good this segment may have been. And like I said, Stephanie was awesome. She was even better at the end of the show. You should never open your pay-per-view with a 15-minute promo. As a fan, I don't want to see it. I see enough of that on Mondays. There was no reason for this segment not to have taken place on Raw last Monday. Instead of doing John Cena comedy at the end of Raw last Monday night, this is the segment that should have aired. Vince should have come out. They should have had the authority out there. John Cena having a serious promo. You add the new stipulation so that going into the show, everybody is fully aware of all the stips going in. And, that would have made more sense. Nobody wants to see a pay-per-view open with a 15-minute authority promo. Or a 15-minute John Cena promo. Nobody wants to see that. That's not how a pay-per-view should open. And I can't wait to see how they explain things when Cena eventually brings back Triple H, since he's the only one with the power now to do so. Can't wait to see how they explain their way out of that one. Was not a fan of this. Goldust and Stardust defending the tag team titles in a fatal 4-way match against the Usos, Los Matadores, and Miz and Mizdow. Damien Mizdow was the star of the show here. In fact, he was the most over guy on the entire show after Sting, I would say. He was basically in the Zack Ryder spot from Survivor Series 2011 when he was the most over guy in Madison Square Garden. I was in the building. It was incredible how over this guy was then. So much so that The Rock had to put him over in a promo after the pay-per-view. The Rock's out there. He just came back, wrestled his first match in like 8 years, trying to cut a promo, and people are just chanting, "We want Ryder," to the point that Rock had to acknowledge it and put the guy over. So that's kind of what I equate it to here. That's the spot that Mizdow was in. People loved him, and they did some great teases during the match where, he was tagged in, but then immediately was tagged back out, and the people booed. And when Miz would do something, the people would boo. When Mizdow would, they would cheer and go, "Yay!" We did have my biggest pet peeve in this match. They did this one sequence where everybody did dives out of the ring, or almost everybody did dives to the outside. The Matadors did their dives. The Usos did their dives. I think Cody did like an ST plunge and fell backwards into a pile of everybody. Torito did a dive. I'm so sick of dives. I've said this before. Everybody does them. So even Luke Harper did one later in the show, and I'm sure Dean Ambrose did one. Everybody does dives. And when everybody does dives, it's like, okay. So what's so impressive about it if everybody can do it? So I did not like that. But other than that, I actually liked this match. I thought it was a very good match. I liked the finish a lot. One of the Usos had nailed the Uso splash on Goldust, and they got thrown out. And I think Miz maybe did. But Mizdow wormed his way in there. He tagged himself in, basically stole the pin away from Miz, got the pin on Goldust, and they won the tag team titles. So Miz and Mizdow now are the champions, which is good news because that means they'll keep them together at least for a little while longer. I think it's a good role for both of them to be in. Miz is right at the level he should probably be at. Mizdow, I'm still loving the gimmick. You don't know how long they're going to be able to milk it for. So at least it'll go for a little while longer. So I like that. We got a backstage comedy segment with Adam Rose and the Rosebuds and the Bunny, and they were playing with some action figures, and Titus O'Neil and Heath Slater showed up. They mocked them and made fun of Adam Rose. And anyway, this was a setup to a tag team match later in the night, Slater Gator against Adam Rose and the Bunny. Yeah, we had a Total Divas elimination match. Natalya, Naomi, Emma, and Alicia Fox against Paige, Summer Rae, Cameron, and Layla. This was the longest Diva stopwatch I've ever done for a pay-per-view match. 14 minutes and 22 seconds they gave these women. And a really stiff final few minutes, I think, saved the match for me. I loved it. I loved the finish of this match. To me, the last 2 minutes of the match made the whole thing for me. Because on the whole, it really wasn't a good match. I mean, there were spots that you would expect where there was a little sloppy. It didn't really look all that good. But I was very happy to see them give the women as much time as they did. It was nice to see them not get rushed through a 7-minute Survivor Series elimination match. And they've done that before. They gave these women almost 15 minutes out there. And one of the cool things I liked about it, actually a couple of things. First of all, Tyson Kidd was at ringside with his headphones on. He was actually tweeting photos during the match. He was tweeting selfies of himself at ringside as the match was in progress, which I thought was funny. It's kind of sad that Tyson Kidd's big role on the Survivor Series was taking selfies at ringside and not actually in a match, but what the hell are you going to do? And the other thing I liked about it was Emma was in the match. They've done nothing with Emma. Emma has been severely wasted. I don't care what you think about her and her stupid dance and her music and everything. She's a good wrestler, and she's being criminally wasted right now on the roster. So to see her in a Survivor Series match and to see her in there with Paige, because the two of them are like best friends. They had a couple of matches back in their NXT days. Really good matches. They have good chemistry. I still think one day if they pull their head out of their ass and they do something with Emma, Paige and Emma could be like one of the more memorable Divas feuds in WWE. I don't want to say all-time great, but it could be up there as one of the better Divas feuds of the last several years. If they really come up with a story, maybe they talk about their friendship and they kind of build it around that. But I think them doing something like that with Emma is a ways off if they ever do it. But just to see Emma in there with Paige, and I think at one point she gave Paige a superplex off the top, it was cool. And Emma got an elimination at one point. She eliminated Summer Rae with her Emma lock, which I still maintain is more devastating looking than John Cena's STF. Actually, there's a lot of divas right now from NXT who have more devastating looking finishers than John Cena does. And Emma is one of them. But the story here was that Paige was left alone. All of her teammates were eliminated. That final sequence that I love so much, it started with a super kick. Paige gave Natalya the sickest super kick you'll ever see. To the point where Natalya kept holding her mouth afterwards. I thought she legitimately had her teeth knocked out. Brutal super kick. And she got her her receipt a few moments later when Natalya gave Paige a released German suplex, almost broke her neck. And it was like all of a sudden in the final 2 minutes of the match, the women went all New Japan on one another. It was great. I loved it. Naomi hit the rear view on Paige. Then she used a sick-looking head scissors DDT. She spiked Paige's head into the mat, got the pin. So a clean sweep for the baby faces in this match. And I liked it. Paige was the focal point of the story, even though she lost. It's not like the other women on her team mattered. It was really all about Paige. And the fans were behind Paige, even though she's the heel. And it came down to Paige. The psychology was kind of warped in a way because, like we saw in the main event, where they did it right, you have the big baby face now who has to overcome the odds. Here it was the complete opposite, where Paige was the heel, but she was left all by herself. And the people kept chanting, let's go Paige, we want Paige. So she's got quite a few fans out there. But like I said, the match itself, up until those final few minutes, nothing special, maybe even a little bad. But to me, the end saved it. I love that final sequence of the match. When the match was over, Tyson Kidd celebrated like he just won a frickin' match at WrestleMania. Natty, at one point, she went up to pose on the turnbuckles, and Tyson climbed up on the turnbuckles and basically blocked her out, which I thought was great. We had Dean Ambrose and Bray Wyatt. There's been a lot of talk about this match. WWE, how they've dropped the ball, and the promos haven't been what people have been expecting. I'm kind of in that camp in that I don't know what I was expecting, I guess, but I expected more. To me, the build-up to this match has been underwhelming. I thought it could be better, but it hasn't been terrible. And I thought no matter what the build-up has been like, they'll go out there at Survivor Series and they'll have a great match. And they went out there and they had a good match. They didn't have a great match. And the reason being they're clearly building, they've announced that the two of them are going to have a rematch in 3 weeks at the TLC pay-per-view. It's already been announced. Bray Wyatt and Dean Ambrose in a TLC match at the next pay-per-view. So to build for the rematch, the big stipulation match that will be much better, I'm sure, they weren't going to go out there and have a blow-away all-time great performance. They had a good match. At one point, Bray Wyatt took the microphone in the middle of the match. He cut a promo on Dean Ambrose, was talking about how we could have ruled the world together because there's nobody who can touch us. He apologized to Dean Ambrose and said that you chose this path. Let me tell you something. Bray has a terrible recruitment strategy. He shows up at the last pay-per-view. He cost Dean Ambrose the match against Seth Rollins, beats him up, leaves him laying, and then he wonders why the guy won't join him. I think his strategy is a little ass backwards here. So he nailed Ambrose with the microphone, which is important to note here, given the finish that came a couple of moments later. He hit him with the mic, went under the ring, grabbed some steel chairs. Ambrose got his hands on the chair. He was threatening to use it on Bray, and Bray was saying, "Come on, give it to me, give it to me." And the referee's telling Ambrose, "Don't do it. You're going to get DQ'd. Don't use that chair. So he drilled Wyatt with the chair anyway for the disqualification. I hated that finish. It was so lame. I know what they were trying to do. I just wish they could have come up with some other way to do it. Just having the guy go, and just hit him with a chair and get DQ'd to me was stupid. I didn't like that finish. I did enjoy the post-show. So even though I didn't enjoy the actual finish to the match, I thought it was lame. I like the post-match stuff, which again, set up the TLC match that's coming up in 3 weeks. They had Ambrose gave Wyatt dirty deeds on the chair, then he went under the ring, he pulled out a table, and he ended up putting Wyatt on the table, gave him an elbow drop through it, brought more chairs out, threw the chairs in the ring, just completely, literally buried Wyatt under a sea of steel chairs. Continued to beat him. He brought out a ladder, and it was a tall-ass ladder, and he climbed to the top, and I'm thinking, oh boy, here we go. What's going to happen here? And then nothing happened. They played his music. So he brought out the ladder to pose. That was kind of a letdown. I think a lot of people were like, that's it? But I still thought the post-match stuff was strong. It was just, a good brawl, but nothing that blew me away. I would imagine they're saving the big stuff for the TLC match, which at least makes sense. Then we had Adam Rose and the Bunny against Titus O'Neil and Heath Slater. The less said about this, the better. The Bunny won. He pinned Heath Slater after a missile drop kick. And I guess the real story here is that Adam Rose had his hand extended on the apron. He wanted the tag. The Bunny never gave him the tag. The Bunny beat up the other guys, pinned them. And Adam Rose was stunned. He just stood there. His hand was still extended even after the match was over. Couldn't believe what he just saw. The Bunny fell backwards into the pile of rosebuds who carried him or her or it, whatever the fuck it is, to the back. And I just don't care about any of this. Then we had a very odd Roman Reigns interview via satellite, even though apparently he was backstage, where he told the announcers he wished he could be there to, quote, make it rain in this bitch. And also, a segment where the announcers refused to look at Roman Reigns up on the Titantron. Instead, they kept looking directly into the camera at us. They were looking at you. They were looking at me when they asked their questions. Now, that would be weird enough. But their crack production staff here thought it would be a genius move to show the announcers as they ask their questions. So you can see Roman Reigns on the Titantron in the background. So now we got a side view of Michael Cole talking into a camera, not looking at Roman Reigns. This was completely goofy in every possible way. I don't know what they were trying to do here, but that just was very, very odd. And it looked bizarre. But Reigns was good. I liked, he had some attitude in this promo. He told JBL at one point that he had stupid questions. That's every backstage interview in WWE since Mean Gene, pretty much. I mean, I especially love it when they interview somebody who was attacked, and their first question is, how do you feel? It's like, how the fuck do you think I feel? I just got attacked. I mean, with questions like that, and they're doing budget cuts, I don't know why they don't just put a microphone stand back there and let wrestlers walk up to it like it's a night at the Improv. Just let them walk up to it and start cutting promos. Why even bother having somebody stand there holding a mic in their hand? Asking stupid questions is a WWE announcer tradition. Saying stupid things, period, is a WWE announcer tradition. We had it on the show before the main event. They had JBL mention that John Cena was the sole survivor in his Survivor Series match back in 2003. Except he wasn't, as many of you pointed out to me. I got a deluge of tweets saying, that's not true. He was partners with Chris Benoit, or He Who Shall Not Be Named. Now, I don't expect them to actually mention Benoit's name. I'm fine with that. But why even bring that up if you're just going to flat out lie about it? It's like, does WWE even know that this thing called the internet exists? I mean, it's a valid question. Do they even realize on their own network that people can go right back to that pay-per-view and see it for themselves? I don't understand. I don't understand why you would even bring that up if that's the case. So JBL ends up looking like an idiot as a result. Anyway, Roman Reigns said he's going to be back in a month. That's what he said. He said, this time next month, I will be back. I don't know if that means he'll be in a match at TLC, if he's coming back right after TLC. His injury is the kind of injury you don't exactly want to rush back from. So hopefully they're smart about it. I don't see the need for him to be at TLC. I think you save him for a Royal Rumble return. I mean, or maybe if you want him to come back somewhere between TLC and the Rumble, since there's such a big gap. I don't know if it's like 6 or 7 weeks maybe between pay-per-views. I would just save him for the Rumble. I see no reason for him to come back before then. So, yeah, and I got to go back to the announcers, actually, for a second. On the subject of stupid things that they have them do. The other thing I love, and they did this for the first Roman Reigns interview, when they had that first big exclusive interview with him after he got hurt. Remember they billed it as an exclusive? What a coup. Who exactly are they competing with for these exclusive interviews? CNN? The Sound Off? It's so goofy. We had AJ Lee and Nikki Bella for the Divas Championship. Stopwatch had this at roughly 35 seconds. This match was over in a heartbeat. If you blink, you missed it. AJ Lee squashed by Nikki Bella. No offense at all. Just completely dominant in every sense of the word. It was just a rack attack and a pin. That was it. Brie Bella kissed AJ on the apron before the rack attack. So what they did here was, they mentioned this on commentary, they are playing off the finish to the Sheamus Daniel Bryan match from WrestleMania 3 years ago. Almost 3 years ago now. Where AJ kissed Bryan and then he got kicked in the face and pinned. It's like the kiss of death. And I don't know if maybe what they're going for here is the fact that they acknowledge that Brie Bella is Daniel Bryan's wife, unlike John Cena, who they never acknowledge is in any kind of relationship with Nikki Bella on TV. Even though both relationships are talked about openly on Total Divas, they only acknowledge one. And AJ obviously has her history with Bryan, so I don't remember the announcers mentioning that, but maybe that's part of it. Maybe she... I don't know. I don't know what they're going for here, because the other thing that happened, apparently, is that Brie turned heel. She was smiling after she helped her sister win the championship, which makes no sense, given that her sisters told her that she wishes she died in the womb. Apparently, they've made up, and Brie now is back on her sister's side and has turned. I guess we'll find out more on Raw later tonight. But yeah, AJ Lee is no longer the Divas champion, and it makes you wonder if those rumors about her leaving the company are true. I mean, the way that she got beaten decisively here seemed like a blow-off to me. I don't know who they move on to as the next challenger, but this was very surprising. We had the main event up next. The only match that mattered on this show. John Cena, Ryback, Big Show, Dolph Ziggler, and Erick Rowan. What a motley crew. Against Team Authority, led by Seth Rollins, Corporate Kane, Rusev, Mark Henry, and Luke Harper. In a Survivor Series 5-on-5 elimination match, if Team Authority loses, the Authority is out of power. Only John Cena has the power to reinstate them. And if Team Cena loses, every member except for John Cena would be fired. And we know what John Cena thinks of his tag team partners. I don't really think he really gave two shits whether or not his partners were fired. He can't bother to lift a finger to save them when they're in trouble either. So we had Mark Henry was eliminated right off the bat. He walked into a Big Show KO punch. First 30 seconds of the match, he's done. So now it's 5-on-4. And the only thing I'm thinking now when Rollins comes in up next to go up against Big Show is, why doesn't Big Show just punch Rollins in the face? You know, I know it's pro wrestling, but it's one of those things where they've built up this knockout punch as being something so devastating. It just takes one punch, and it just completely knocks out his opponent. And it worked on Mark Henry, who's a 450-pound man. In comes Seth Rollins. You would think the first thing Big Show would do is punch him in the face, but he doesn't do it. We had Rusev eliminating Ryback. Ryback, I think, was the second guy, eliminated in this match after Seth Rollins came in, I think, behind the ref's back, gave him a curb stomp, and then Rusev followed up with it was like a savate kick, whatever the hell they call it, and he pinned him. And this was a head-scratcher to me, because the last 2 weeks, maybe 3, of television, definitely the last 2 weeks, have all been built around Ryback. And whether or not Ryback would join Team Cena, or if Ryback would join Team Authority. And the guy seemed to be getting some of the steam back behind him. He was pushed as a top guy at one point, and then got knocked down to the mid-card. Now he was starting to get some of that momentum back. Everything was built around him and who he was going to partner with. And he's the second guy eliminated in the match. And he was not, it was just like, okay, Ryback's gone, and he was never mentioned again. He didn't come back out. It was just, that's it. So that was very weird to me, that they would build him up like that and just dump him out that early, almost like an afterthought. We had Rusev, who was actually counted out. I like the way they did this a lot. He was in there legally with Ziggler. So they're outside the ring, and he's got Ziggler on the announce table. And it was Triple H who told him to do it. Triple H is like, I want you to put this guy through the table. So Rusev climbs on top of the other announce table and basically runs and tries to do a splash onto Dolph, who moves out of the way, and Rusev does a belly flop through the announce table. And people are going crazy because the referee's counting. They're just telling Rusev, get up, get back in the ring. Anyway, Ziggler got back in the ring just in the nick of time. Rusev did not make it back in. The place went crazy, lots of USA chants. I thought the way they did that was very clever. You couldn't pin Rusev in this match. Him losing by countout or DQ, I figured is what they would have done. It's the way to go. You're not going to beat the guy in a tag team match like that. So I thought that was well done. We had Luke Harper pinning Erick Rowan next for the next elimination in the match, which brought it down to 3-on-3. And that's when they did the first shocking thing of the match, which really should not have been shocking at all. It did shock me. I did not see it coming. I don't know why, because on my own podcast this past weekend, I said one thing that would make sense on this show would be for a member of Team Cena to turn on him. Although I figured if it was going to be anybody, it would have been Dolph Ziggler. Or an outside shot, maybe it would have been Sheamus, who I know supposedly just had surgery. He was taken out of the match, but maybe Sheamus could have done like a run-in or something. But Ziggler was the one who, week after week after week, was getting his ass kicked by the Authority. 2-on-1, 3-on-1, curb stomp after curb stomp. Lost his championship last week to Luke Harper. And not one time did the captain of Team Cena come out to even out the odds and to kind of give him an assist. So if it would have made sense for anybody to turn heel and say, fuck this, it would have been Ziggler. But instead they did it with Big Show, who also got beaten down last week, and Cena didn't come out to bother saving him or Sheamus either, even though he's the captain of the team. So in that way, it kind of made sense. I don't know if that's how they're going to explain it on TV. They may come up with some cockamamie explanation that doesn't make any sense at all. Something like when Mark Henry turned on Big Show. It's like he turned on him because he tagged him into a match too hard. And then he did a promo, oh, Big Show was always jealous of me. I mean, sometimes when they do these turns, the explanations are very, very weak. So I'm curious to see how they approach this with the Big Show. But that actually would make sense if he said, John Cena is the most selfish guy I know. I turned on him before he could turn on me. Even though a year ago, you go back a year ago, and Big Show was in this feud with the Authority. All those awful things that Stephanie said about him, how you're a giant and you're going to die soon and you're worthless without this company, and she made Big Show cry and she slapped him. I guess all of that is forgiven. But again, if they wanted to go that route with Cena as an explanation, they could. I guess the only issue there is that might position Big Show in a way as a babyface. I don't know if they want to do that. But anyway, he tagged in. He knocked Cena out with a KO punch and shook Triple H's hand and walked out. And I guess got himself counted out. Meanwhile, Cena's on the ground. He's knocked out. And Seth Rollins stole the pin. And so that was the other shocking part of this, is that John Cena, the captain of Team Cena, was eliminated. It reminded me in a way of that Elimination Chamber match from many years ago when Cena got eliminated. He was the champion, I think, going into it, and he got eliminated towards the end of the match, but not at the very end. And it came down to Edge and Rey Mysterio. And I remember when Cena got pinned, I think everybody in like one sequence gave him their finishing move. Like Rey hit the 619 on him, and then finally Edge speared him and pinned him. And it was like this shocking thing, and Edge had that great like expression on his face. This may not have been as good as that, but this kind of reminded me of that in a way. And Cena, he shook it off and walked to the back on his own power. Again, very important thing to keep in mind here as we get towards the end of this match. Remember that. John Cena left on his own power. So it came down to Dolph Ziggler as the sole babyface left in this match against three members of the Authority. It was Kane, Seth Rollins, and Luke Harper who were left. And I love that. I love what they did at the end of this match here. Having Ziggler be the guy as the sole babyface left, the babyface in peril, it was the perfect role for him. They beat him up, and they beat him up, and they beat him up. But he somehow was able to persevere. A lot of near falls. He kept kicking out. He got the pin on Kane after a zigzag. Place went crazy. So now it's 2-on-1. Ziggler ended up pinning Luke Harper with a roll-up to make it one-on-one. Now the place was going crazy. And it came down to Dolph Ziggler and Seth Rollins. And to me, that's pretty cool. I thought it was cool that they let Rollins and Ambrose headline the last pay-per-view. And here we are the very next month, this big, important Survivor Series match that they built up. And it comes down to Seth Rollins and Dolph Ziggler. And I don't know what they have planned for Dolph Ziggler. It's not like Dolph is the new guy. He's been around forever. But he's still a relatively young guy. He's awesome. Rollins is great. You could say that what we were looking at is the future of the company. Certainly in Rollins, I think it is. So these guys are great. Obviously, they had a great final few minutes going back and forth. A lot of interference by the Authority. Jamie Noble and Joey Mercury were ringside. At one point, they ran in. Now they're all just beating the crap out of Ziggler. They're just beating him up. But Ziggler outsmarted them, and he got rid of the Stooges with a pair of super kicks. And he laid out Rollins with the zigzag. And it looked like he had victory well in hand. The referee went to count. Triple H pulled the referee outside. I think there was a second referee that came down. Actually, there was. And Triple H broke that pinfall up by elbowing the referee in the back of the head. Then he violently threw him out of the ring. So now everyone's all pissed off, of course. They got the fans. They got him in the palm of their hand at this point. The people are reacting. I mean, it's great. It's great to see Ziggler again. I said it before, but it's just great to see him and not John Cena in that position. And so Triple H now is beating the hell out of Dolph Ziggler. He gives him a pedigree. He pulls Rollins on top of him. He waves to the back. Out comes Scott Armstrong, the old crooked referee from a year ago. He counts 1, and before he hits 2, we hear theme music. And people start to go nuts. And this is where Sting made his very first appearance in a WWE arena. They had a Titantron ready for him. They had the visions of the Crow. You heard Crow sounds. They gave him new music. Now, I see a lot of people very upset. Oh, they gave him new music. Why can't they just use the other music? They own that music. Yeah, but this is WWE, and they like to put their own spin on things. This is not a surprise. I like Sting's old Crow music. This music was not bad. Actually, some of you pointed out that this music, it almost sounded like a remixed version of the old Unholy Alliance theme that Undertaker and Big Show had back in the Attitude Era. It may be. Maybe it is. Maybe it is a remixed version of that. I thought the music was pretty cool, personally. So I'm not making a big deal about that. But he came out with new music, no baseball bat, even though the bat, they had him on screen with the bat, but maybe the bat's not PG, I guess. It's okay to hit people with cinder blocks and steel chairs, but not baseball bats. He comes out with the Crow face paint, long trench coat, and he comes down to the ring. He knocks out Scott Armstrong, who Triple H sent outside to... I don't know what Scott Armstrong thought he was going to do. He was going to stop Sting, I guess. Sting hit him, knocked him out. Came into the ring, and now we had a Triple H Sting face-off in the middle of the ring. Now, I think they probably milked this for a good at least 30 seconds longer than they should have, because it felt like they just stood there staring at each other forever. And Sting looked a little weird. It was weird, because when he got in the ring, and Triple H started to kind of circle, and so Sting was also going to circle, he looked like a penguin. I don't know why. He was kind of like waddling back and forth. It was very distracting to me. And the one thing I have to say, I was watching this at my friend's house. He's got the big HD TV, and looking at Sting up close in HD, he definitely looked his age. I still think he's in really good shape for a guy who's closing in on 60 years old. I hope I'm in that kind of shape when I get to be his age. But boy, he definitely was looking his age. Probably would have been better if he would have slicked his hair back the way that it's been slicked back when he's made appearances for the video game. Like, he was at Comic-Con a couple of months ago, and he had his hair, like, wetted and slicked back. Here, he had what I would describe as, like, Ric Flair hair towards the end. Flair's hair was really thinning. Obviously, Sting's hair is really thinning. But when Flair would wrestle a match, like in TNA, his hair was, like, suspended in midair. It's hard for me to describe. He had, like, this wacky Dr. Emmett Brown hair from Back to the Future if he stuck his finger in a light socket or something. Sting has the same kind of deal going on there, which is kind of a shame. But look, like I said, he's older, he's looking more his age, but he still looked fine. I'm nitpicking here. I was very excited to see Sting. It's a historic thing. I mean, here's a guy who probably should have come in a good 5 years ago. Probably should have come in when they bought WCW, in all honesty. He probably should have come in over a decade ago. So it is what it is. But to see him inside a WWE ring, even though we all knew he was going to be there, the news leaked, or, at the end of the week, it was still a very cool moment. Whether you're a Sting fan or not, it was a historic moment, and it was a big deal. It really was something that you gave the audience to make them feel like they had witnessed something special, which is what you wanted to do on a show like this, because you're trying to sell a network. That's why they trotted him out there. So he's face-to-face with Triple H, and Triple H goes to hit him. Sting ducks, kicks him in the gut, and drops him with a Scorpion Death Drop. Place goes crazy. Sting ends up putting Dolph Ziggler on top of Seth Rollins. Referee crawls back in, counts the pin, and Dolph Ziggler is the sole survivor on Team Cena as Team Cena beats the Authority with a little assist from Sting. I have to say one other thing about the entrance of Sting. And this was a negative, and this has nothing to do with Sting. This has everything to do with what they had the announcers do. This was Sting's very first appearance ever on a WWE pay-per-view. The announcers were in a position to make this feel like a really special moment. And Michael Cole, he tried to do that. Oh my God, it's Sting. Stinger is here. But they had JBL start running down all of his accomplishments, all of the different championships he won, like he's a college athlete or something. There's a time and a place for that. That's fine if, Sting is about to wrestle his very first match, and you want to run down all the NWA titles and the WCW titles that he's won. Obviously, they're not going to mention the TNA ones. But when he first walked out there, to have JBL very casually, oh, look, it's Sting, former 2-time NWA or 6-time NWA champion, and blah, 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 blah. It was not the right moment to be talking about that. I expected more out of that initial call of Sting's very first appearance. That it didn't ruin it or anything like that. I just felt like, that's not the time to be running down his resume in wrestling. But Ziggler gets the big win here, probably the biggest win of his career, even more so than that win over John Cena at TLC a few years ago. I mean, this was a big, big win for Dolph Ziggler. The people reacted to him like he was a star. They badly wanted to see him win this match. It didn't seem to me like anybody felt cheated that he was the one out there and not John Cena at the end. And to the few people who actually wrote in to me saying, do you think Sting having to interfere on his behalf hurt Dolph Ziggler's win? Give me a break. I mean, are you out of your mind? I don't even see how anybody could logically say something like that. The fact that Dolph Ziggler was even in there at the end getting the win is a miracle unto itself. And I'm sure as he's laying there on that mat watching this go on, I'm sure his eye is like open a little bit watching Sting in the ring for the first time. And Ziggler's been a fan of wrestling since he was a little kid. I mean, he's got to be going crazy on the inside. He's probably got to do everything in his power not to smile, like when Jake Roberts was on Old School Raw and put the snake on top of Dean Ambrose. I think it was Ambrose. And Ambrose was doing everything in his power not to crack a smile. He was so happy. It was a genuinely cool moment for the guy. And I'm happy for him because he's had to eat a lot of shit recently. And it makes me think maybe they actually do have a plan in mind for him. The worst thing that could happen is that he gets this big win. And the only reason he got the big win, it really wasn't about Ziggler winning. It was all about Sting. And it didn't matter what member of Team Cena was in there. It could have been Erick Rowan. The real story that they end up pushing is that Sting had a hand in the downfall of the Authority, and who actually won the match is almost an afterthought. That would be the worst thing they could possibly do. If they don't take advantage of this, if they don't capitalize on this and start booking Ziggler in a completely different way and really start positioning him as an upper card, maybe even a main event level guy, they're out of their fucking minds. Okay, because they've had chance after chance after chance with this guy, including 2 years ago when he beat Cena and he aligned with AJ and he had the briefcase. He had everything going for him, and then he eventually cashed in that briefcase. And I was in the building when he did in New Jersey, and I have never been in a building when a crowd reacted that way in my life when he won that World Heavyweight Championship. And then he got hurt, and he came back, and it's almost like he got punished for being hurt because they never did anything with him again after that for months and months and months. So all the times that they've had to really push this guy is something special. And now they go and do this. And if they don't take advantage of this, then, like I said, they've got their head in the clouds. I don't know what else to say. It's right there. You made a star in one night. Don't squander this. Take advantage of this. This guy can be big for you. Maybe not the next John Cena or even the next Roman Reigns, but he can be way up there. And I hope they do that, and I hope they realize that they've got something now and that they really made a star in one night. Cena did come out. He gave Ziggler and the aisleway an embrace, and then he kind of went to the back with him, almost like his little endorsement. So for one night at least, it was a very cool moment. I thought the finish was excellent. It was a hot way to go off the air. And to me, it was a one-match show, and that one match over-delivered. It was an excellent match. The wrestling was great. The storytelling was great. The surprises were great. Seeing Sting was great. And I don't see how you can give that main event anything but a thumbs up. And since this whole show was built around the main event, it's hard not to give the show itself a thumbs up. If I had to say anything, I would probably do thumbs up leaning down just because the rest of the show is so much weaker by comparison. But I do think people are beating up on the entire show as a whole a little too much. I have seen far worse from WWE on pay-per-view. Need I remind you of some of the pay-per-views they put on a year ago? And if you don't remember what I'm talking about, go back and watch the pay-per-view last September and last October, including a main event between Daniel Bryan and Randy Orton that ended without a decision when the Big Show knocked them both out like a bunch of goobers and walked to the back. That's how a pay-per-view ended a year ago. So you know what? The way I look at it, the way Survivor Series went off the air, it's one of the more memorable endings. It's one of the more memorable main events to a Survivor Series of all time. As a pay-per-view, not even close to being one of the best Survivor Series shows of all time. But I was not angry or upset or felt cheated in any way when they went off the air. I felt pretty happy. I felt like I had witnessed something special, and I was looking forward to what they have to follow up on Raw the next night. And at the end of the day, that's all you can ask for. So that's your Survivor Series 2014 rundown. You can follow me on Twitter at Solomonster. I live tweet during all the pay-per-views. I'll be doing that during Raw, tonight, every single week. You can listen to full episodes of the Solomonster Sounds Off on thesolomonster.com. We're also on Stitcher Radio, TuneIn Radio, and iTunes. And also, so you guys are aware, we have our store on ProWrestlingTees.com. We have a whole bunch of t-shirts, 10 t-shirts and more to come. If you go to ProWrestlingTees.com/Solomonster Sounds Off, that's the URL for our store. We have a Black Friday sale going on this week. If you use the promo code Black Friday, all one word, during checkout, you get 20% off your order. And the sale starts on Thanksgiving Eve. So on the 26th at noon is when it starts, and it runs through midnight next Monday, December 1st. So take advantage of that. You get 20% off. We got some good shirts up there. ProWrestlingTees.com/Solomonster Sounds Off. I'll be back soon with a brand new Sound Off Extra, a Chris Jericho book review here on this channel, so search around for it. Should be going up probably within the next week or so. Have a happy Thanksgiving if you are listening to this before the holiday, and please hit the subscribe button on this channel so when new videos go up, you will be alerted. So please do that, and we will see you again very soon. Until then, be well, stay safe. Thank you for supporting the Sound Off, and we'll see you next time. Take care, guys.